They ripped my uniform off in front of 300 people. The sound. God, the sound of fabric tearing, seams splitting, buttons hitting marble floors like scattered coins. The flash of camera phones turned the ballroom into a lightning storm. And the laughter. That cruel, gleeful laughter that echoed off the gold-trimmed walls like I was the punchline to a joke I never heard. Madam Parker stood on the stage, one perfectly manicured hand clutching an empty velvet box, the other pointing at me like I was a criminal in a courtroom. "Strip her," she commanded, voice ringing with authority. "Check every pocket. Every seam. I want answers." My knees buckled. Two security guards, massive men in black suits with stone faces, grabbed my arms before I could collapse. Their fingers dug into my flesh like iron clamps. "Wait," my voice cracked. "I didn't. Search her. Now." One guard yanked at my apron strings. The other grabbed my collar. Buttons popped, pop pop pop, like tiny explosions. The white fabric of my maid's uniform split down the middle, exposing my bra, my skin, my shame. I tried to cover myself, arms wrapping around my torso, but they pulled my hands away. "Please," I begged, tears already streaming. "I didn't take anything. I swear." Nobody moved. Nobody helped. 300 people in designer gowns that cost more than cars, in tuxedos tailored in Milan, in jewelry that could feed families for years, they all just watched. Some filmed, phones raised high to capture every angle of my destruction. Some whispered behind jeweled hands, eyes glittering with schadenfreude. One woman, a socialite in a blood-red dress, actually laughed and raised her champagne glass like this was entertainment. "Nothing here," the first guard grunted, stepping back. "Then check again," Madam Parker snapped, descending from the stage like a queen delivering judgment. "She's been in this house for months. She had access. She had motive." "Motive?" I gasped. "What motive?" "I'm just greedy," Madam finished, her voice dripping with disdain. "Like all the help. You see what you can't have, and you take it." They tore what remained of my uniform. The fabric gave way completely, hanging off my shoulders in shreds. I stood there in my undergarments, shaking, sobbing, humiliated, while 300 strangers devoured my pain. I saw faces in the crowd. The mayor's wife, covering her mouth but not looking away. A tech mogul, filming on his phone. A fashion designer, smirking. And in the back, near the champagne fountain, Neville Parker. The golden boy. The heir. The man who'd cornered me in dark hallways and called me names when I rejected him. He raised his glass to me. A mock salute. And winked. My vision blurred. My chest felt like it was caving in. The weight of their stares, their judgment, their cruelty, it crushed me. I wanted to disappear. To sink into the marble and never resurface. This is it, I thought. This is how I end. Not as a person. As a spectacle. And then. A sound. Distant at first. A low, rhythmic thrum-thrum-thrum that made the chandeliers tremble. Heads began to turn. The sound grew louder, deeper, until it drowned out the whispers and the music and the blood rushing in my ears. The tall ballroom windows rattled in their frames. Champagne rippled in crystal flutes. A vase of orchids toppled off a side table and shattered. "What is that?" someone shouted. The terrace doors burst open. Wind, cold, fierce, unforgiving, whipped through the ballroom. Silk napkins flew like birds. Candles extinguished in waves. Women grabbed their hair. Men shielded their faces. And through the chaos, through the swirling wind and confusion, I saw it. A helicopter. Black. Sleek. Descending onto the estate's private helipad like a predator swooping down on prey. The crowd pushed toward the windows, necks craning, voices rising in a cacophony of shock and curiosity. Who the hell is that? Oh my God. The helicopter landed. The side door slid open. And out stepped a man who made the entire room go silent. Tall, at least 6 feet 3 inches. Broad-shouldered. A navy suit that fit like it was painted on. Dark hair slightly tousled by the wind. And eyes, sharp, stormy, furious, that locked onto mine the moment he entered the ballroom. Richard Lawson. My husband. The billionaire tech mogul whose name opened doors and closed deals. The man who revolutionized cloud computing and turned algorithms into empires. The man I'd married in secret 6 months ago and asked to stay hidden while I disappeared into anonymity. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He just walked. Straight through the crowd. Past senators. Past oil barons. Past the Parkers frozen in shock. Straight to me. The room parted for him like the Red Sea. When he reached me, he stopped. His jaw was tight. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. For a moment, he just looked at me, at my torn clothes, my tear-streaked face, my shaking body. Then, without a word, he pulled off his suit jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders. It was warm. It smelled like him, sandalwood and safety. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. A soft, deliberate kiss that felt like a vow. And then he turned to the crowd. His voice was quiet, controlled, deadly. No one touches my wife again. That word, wife, detonated like a bomb. Gasps rippled through the ballroom like shockwaves. Phones dropped. Jaws slackened. Someone's champagne glass slipped from their hand and shattered on the marble. Wife. That's Richard Lawson. She's married to him? Madame Parker's face drained of color. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water, no sound escaping. Neville looked like he'd swallowed glass. Clarissa, the fellow maid who'd been whispering in corners, who'd helped set this trap, stumbled backward, hand over her mouth, eyes wide with horror. And me. I collapsed into Richard's arms. He caught me easily, holding me upright when my legs gave out. I've got you, he murmured into my hair. I've got you. But his eyes were on Madame Parker. And they promised retribution. What happens when a billionaire walks into a room full of people who just destroyed his wife? Stick around. Because what comes next isn't just revenge, it's justice. And it's going to be beautiful. Before we continue, take a second to smash that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to know that dignity isn't a luxury, it's a birthright. Because this story, it's just getting started. Let me take you back. Back to where this all began. Not in a ballroom filled with predators. But on a terrace in Venice, where the only sound was water lapping against ancient stone and the distant song of a gondolier echoing through narrow canals. My name is Hailey Lawson. Not Monroe. Not the help. Lawson. Wife of Richard Lawson. The man whose algorithm changed the world. The man whose name alone could move markets. We'd been married for 3 weeks. No cameras. No press releases. No society pages or magazine covers. Just us, a priest who spoke broken English, and the promise that we'd choose each other every day for the rest of our lives. Richard wanted to give me everything. A penthouse overlooking Central Park. A villa in Tuscany. A private island if I wanted it. But I didn't want islands. I wanted something he couldn't buy. I need to disappear, I told him one night as we stood on our hotel balcony, watching the city lights shimmer on the water. He turned to me, confused. Disappear? For 6 months. Maybe less. I need to live, anonymously. Hailey, I don't understand. Richard. I took his hands, squeezing them. I need to know who I am when I'm not standing next to you. When I'm not Mrs. Lawson or the billionaire's wife. When I'm just me. He was silent for a long moment. Then, you think people only see you because of me? I don't know, I admitted. And that's the problem. I need to find out. By doing what? By working. By being invisible. By walking into a world where my last name doesn't open doors. He stared at me like I'd suggested jumping off the balcony. You want to, what? Get a job. As a maid, I said. Or a housekeeper. Something where I can see how people really treat those they think are beneath them. That's insane. Maybe, I agreed. But I need it. I need to know what I'm made of when there's no safety net. Richard ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small balcony. This is dangerous, Hailey. People can be cruel. Especially to those they think can't fight back. I know. You could get hurt. I know. I don't like this. I know. He stopped pacing and faced me. 6 months. 6 months. And if something goes wrong, anything, you call me. Immediately. Deal. I mean it, Hailey. One word, and I'm there. Helicopter, private jet, I don't care. You call, I come. I kissed him. I will. Promise me. I promise. He pulled me close, resting his chin on top of my head. You're the bravest person I know. And the most stubborn. I smiled against his chest. That's why you married me. Among other reasons. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of the mirror in our New York penthouse, barely recognizing myself. My long auburn hair cut to shoulder length. My designer clothes replaced with thrift store jeans and a plain white blouse. My platinum wedding ring tucked into a velvet box and locked in our safe. I looked ordinary. Richard stood behind me, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. Last chance to change your mind, he said. I'm not changing my mind. Hailey. Richard. I turned to face him. I need this. Trust me. He sighed. Always. But I'm putting precautions in place. What kind of precautions? The kind you won't notice, he said. Security at a distance. Financial monitoring. And if anyone hurts you, I'll know about it. You're going to spy on me. I'm going to protect you, he corrected. There's a difference. I kissed him one more time. Then I picked up my bag, a worn canvas thing I'd bought at a second-hand shop, and walked out the door. Into a world that didn't know my name. The Parker mansion wasn't a home. It was a monument to excess. Marble columns that belonged in a museum. Gold trim on everything, from doorknobs to picture frames. A fountain in the circular driveway that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. I stood at the servant's entrance, resume in hand, heart pounding. The door opened. A woman appeared, late 50s, severe bun, lips pressed into a permanent line of disapproval. She looked me up and down like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. You're the new girl? Hailey Monroe? Yes, I'm Mrs. Greta. Head housekeeper. You follow my rules, we'll get along fine. You don't, you're gone. Clear? Yes, Madam Parker runs this house like a ship. Everything in its place. Everyone in their place. You drop a glass, you're fired. You talk back, you're fired. You breathe too loud, you're fired. I finished. I understand. She handed me a starched black and white uniform. Change. Be in the kitchen in 10 minutes. Move. The work was brutal. Not physically, though, scrubbing floors and polishing silver until my fingers cramped came close. But mentally. Emotionally. Being invisible is harder than you think. You stand in corners while people walk past like you're furniture. You serve tea and they don't say thank you, they don't even look at you. You hear conversations about politics, business, gossip, and you're expected to pretend you don't exist. But I managed. Head down. Mouth shut. Hands moving. Stay invisible. That became my mantra. Until the day he noticed me. It was my second week. I was in the wine cellar, restocking bottles, when I heard footsteps behind me. You're new. I turned. A man stood in the doorway. Early 30s. Expensive haircut. Designer suit slightly rumpled. Eyes glassy, drunk or high, maybe both. Neville Parker. The heir. The golden boy with a trust fund and zero accountability. Yes, sir, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Just restocking. Hailey, right? Yes, sir. He stepped closer. I smelled whiskey and cologne. You don't look like the others. Sir. The other maids. They're plain. You're not. My stomach tightened. I should get back to work. Not yet. He blocked the doorway. Let's talk. About what? About how a girl like you ends up in a place like this. I needed a job. Come on. He leaned against the doorframe, smirking. Pretty girl like you. You could do better. I could help you do better. I'm fine where I am. Are you? His eyes traveled down, then back up. Slowly. Because I could make things very comfortable for you. If you're nice. Bile rose in my throat. I need to go. I tried to slip past him, but he caught my wrist. I'm not done talking. Let go. Don't be rude, Hailey. I'm being generous here. I yanked my hand free. I said let go. His expression darkened. You're making a mistake. No, I said, meeting his eyes. You are. I walked out. Behind me, I heard him mutter, bitch. If Neville was a wolf, his mother was the hunter. Madam Madeline Parker. 63. Former socialite. Current board member of half the city's cultural institutions and twice as many corporations. She ruled her house with cold precision and zero tolerance for anything less than perfection. The first time she really looked at me was during afternoon tea service. I poured Earl Grey into her porcelain cup Wedgwood, probably worth more than my fake monthly salary, steady hands, perfect angle, no spills. She watched me. Not the tea. Me. You stand differently than the others, she said, voice clipped. I froze. Madam. Your posture. It's deliberate. Almost elegant. Think fast, Hailey. I took dance classes growing up, I said. A half-truth. Ballet. Ballroom. Etiquette training. All the things money buys when you're raised in wealth. She tilted her head, studying me like I was a puzzle. Quite interesting. Madam. Be careful, Hailey. Elegance in a maid can look like arrogance. And arrogance. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Is not tolerated here. It wasn't advice. It was a warning. After that conversation, everything changed. Madam Parker started watching me. Always. I'd be arranging flowers, and she'd appear in the doorway. Arms crossed. Silent. I'd be serving dinner, and I'd feel her eyes tracking my every movement. The other staff noticed too. Clarissa, a fellow maid who'd been friendly at first, stopped sitting with me at lunch. Clarissa. I called one day as she walked past with her tray. She didn't stop. Busy. Did I do something wrong? She hesitated. Then, quietly, just keep your head down, Hailey. You're making waves. I haven't done anything. Exactly, she whispered. That's the problem. And she walked away. I stood there, tray in hand, feeling the ground shift beneath me. Something was coming. I just didn't know what. Waves turn into storms. And storms. They destroy everything in their path. What I didn't know yet was that the Parkers have already decided my fate. And they're about to make their move. The Parker estate felt different after that. Like the air itself had turned hostile. Staff members who used to nod politely now avoided eye contact. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Clarissa wouldn't even look at me anymore. And Neville. Neville was everywhere. In hallways I didn't expect him. In rooms I thought were empty. Always watching. Always smirking. Like he knew something I didn't. One evening, 2 weeks before the Winter Gala, I was carrying fresh linens to the guest wing when I heard voices. Low. Urgent. Coming from the utility closet near the back stairwell. I slowed my steps, pressing against the wall. During the gala. Are you sure? What if she? She won't. She's nobody. Who's going to believe her? My heart hammered against my ribs. But if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong. Madam's already approved it. A long pause. Then, the necklace. The necklace. Footsteps. I barely had time to duck into a nearby doorway before two figures emerged. Clarissa. And one of the junior security guards, a man named Marcus who'd always seemed decent but distant. Clarissa's face was pale, her hands shaking. Marcus looked tense, jaw clenched. They walked past me without noticing. I waited until their footsteps faded before I exhaled. The necklace. The gala. Madam's already approved it. My mind raced. What were they planning? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my narrow bed in the staff quarters, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation. The necklace. Madam Parker owned dozens of pieces of jewelry. She rotated them like accessories, wearing different diamonds and emeralds and sapphires depending on the occasion. But one piece stood out. The one she wore to every major event. A diamond necklace, Art Deco, platinum setting, 27 flawless stones valued at $2.5 million. Her pride and joy. No. They wouldn't. Would they? I tried to push the thought away, but it clung to me like smoke. The next day, I kept my head down even more than usual. Avoided Clarissa. Stayed out of Neville's path. Worked faster, quieter, smaller. But it didn't matter. Because they'd already decided. 3 days before the gala, Neville cornered me again. This time in the hallway outside the library. Late evening. Most of the staff had gone home. I was carrying a stack of folded tablecloths when he appeared. Hailey. I kept walking. Excuse me, sir. I need to. He stepped in front of me, blocking my path. We need to talk. I'm working. You're always working. His words were slurred. Eyes red-rimmed. Don't you ever take a break? No, sir. You think you're better than me, don't you? I blinked. What? You turned me down. Twice. Do you know how many women would kill for my attention? Then go find one of them. His jaw clenched. You don't get to talk to me like that. I'm just trying to do my job. Your job. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Your job is to do what you're told. And I'm telling you, stop acting like you're too good for this place. I tried to step around him, but he grabbed my arm. Let go. Or what? I looked him dead in the eye. Or you'll regret it. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Uncertainty. Doubt. Then it vanished, replaced by cold fury. You're going to regret a lot of things, Hailey. Starting very soon. He released my arm and walked away. I stood there, shaking, tablecloths clutched to my chest. You're going to regret a lot of things. Starting very soon. The words kept replaying in my head. The night before the Winter Gala, I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow felt like a threat. I thought about calling Richard. One word, and I'm there. But what would I say? I overheard something suspicious. Neville threatened me. I had no proof. No evidence. Just a bad feeling and fragments of a conversation. So I stayed silent. And I walked straight into their trap. The day of the gala, the estate transformed. Florists arrived at dawn, filling every room with orchids and roses. Caterers set up in the kitchens, preparing dishes I couldn't even pronounce. The grand ballroom, already opulent, became something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers polished until they blazed like captured stars. Gold-rimmed china stacked perfectly. Champagne flutes lined up like soldiers. And me. I worked like a ghost. Polishing. Arranging. Adjusting. Mrs. Greta barked orders. Hailey. Those napkins are crooked. Hailey. More champagne in the west corridor. Hailey. Stop standing there like a statue and move. I moved. By evening, guests began to arrive. Politicians. CEOs. Old money and new money and people whose money had money. They glittered. They laughed. They drank champagne that cost more per bottle than I was supposedly paid in a month. And I became part of the architecture. A shadow in black and white. Invisible. At 9:47 p.m., I saw Clarissa slip out of the restricted jewelry room. Her face was ghost white. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her apron. When she saw me watching, she froze. Our eyes met. For just a second, I saw something in her expression. Guilt. Fear. Apology. Then she turned and hurried away. My stomach dropped. It's happening. Whatever they planned, it's happening now. I wanted to run. To find Mrs. Greta or security or anyone who might listen. But before I could move, a voice rang out across the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please? Madam Parker. Standing on the small stage at the front of the ballroom. Microphone in hand. Face perfectly composed. The orchestra fell silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. All eyes turned to her. I apologize for the interruption, she said, voice carrying across the vast space. But I'm afraid something unfortunate has occurred. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. She held up an empty velvet box. My diamond necklace. A family heirloom valued at $2.5 million. It's missing. Gasps. Shocked whispers. Phones slowly rising. Stolen, she continued, within the last hour. From this very house. The energy in the room shifted. Curiosity became suspicion. Suspicion became excitement. A scandal. At the Parker estate. This would be talked about for months. Madam Parker let the moment build. Then, slowly, she turned. And looked directly at me. Last seen near the service corridor. Where this maid was working. Every head in the ballroom swiveled toward me. 300 pairs of eyes. Pinning me in place like a butterfly on a board. My mouth went dry. Security. Her voice was ice. Search her. No, wait. 2 guards moved toward me. Massive. Impassive. Hands reaching. I didn't take anything. My voice cracked, rising in pitch. Please, I didn't. Then you won't mind being searched, Madam said calmly. But They grabbed my arms. Check her pockets. Her uniform. Every seam. Please. Tears were already forming. Please don't. One guard pulled at my apron strings. The other yanked my collar. Buttons popped. Fabric tore. The crowd watched. Some filmed. Some gasped. Some smiled. They were enjoying this. Nothing in the pockets, one guard said. Then check again, Madam snapped. She's clever. She could have hidden it. They ripped the rest of my uniform. Tore it away piece by piece until I stood there half naked, shaking, tears streaming down my face in front of everyone. I tried to cover myself. Tried to hold onto some shred of dignity. But they pulled my hands away. Please, I sobbed. Please stop. No one stopped. In the back of the room, I saw Neville raise his glass. A mock salute. Victory in his eyes. And I knew. This was never about a necklace. This was about breaking me. Still nothing, the guard said, stepping back. Madam Parker's lips thinned. Then she's hidden it elsewhere. Detain her. Call the police. No. The guards grabbed me again. And that's when I heard it. Distant. Growing. Thrum thrum thrum. The sound was unmistakable now. Deep. Mechanical. Growing louder by the second. The chandelier above trembled, crystals tinkling like wind chimes in a hurricane. Champagne rippled in glasses. A vase of white orchids toppled off a side table and shattered across the marble floor. What the hell is that? Someone shouted. Heads turned toward the windows. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, we could see it, a black helicopter descending rapidly toward the estate's private helipad, rotors cutting through the night sky like blades. Is that? Who would? Oh my God. The terrace doors burst open. Wind, cold, fierce, carrying the smell of jet fuel and rain, whipped through the ballroom like a living thing. Silk napkins flew. Candles extinguished in waves. Women clutched their hair. Men shielded their faces. I stood there, barely clothed, barely breathing, watching as the helicopter touched down. The rotors kept spinning. The side door opened. And out stepped a man who made the entire room fall silent. Richard. My husband. 6'3" of controlled fury in a navy Tom Ford suit, white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, dark hair windswept, jaw set like carved stone. He looked like an avenging angel. And he was walking straight toward me. The crowd parted. Not because anyone told them to. But because when a man like Richard Lawson walks into a room, you move. Politicians who'd been laughing moments ago pressed themselves against walls. Socialites who'd been filming my humiliation lowered their phones. Even the security guards who'd torn my clothes stepped back instinctively. Richard's eyes never left mine. He crossed the ballroom in long, deliberate strides, past the champagne fountain, past the orchestra pit, past Madame Parker who stood frozen on the stage, mouth open, color draining from her perfectly made-up face. When he reached me, he stopped. For a moment, he just looked at me. At my torn uniform hanging in shreds. At the tears on my cheeks. At the way I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. Something flickered across his face, rage so pure and cold it could have frozen fire. Then, without a word, he pulled off his suit jacket. The movements were precise. Controlled. But I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands trembled slightly as he draped the jacket around me. It was warm. It smelled like sandalwood and cedar and home. He pulled it tight around my shoulders, then tilted my chin up with one finger so I had to meet his eyes. "I'm here," he said quietly. "Just for me. You're safe now." I tried to speak, but only a sob came out. He wrapped one arm around me, holding me upright when my knees threatened to buckle. Then he turned to face the room. And when he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the ballroom despite being barely above conversation level. "No one touches my wife again." Silence. Absolute, crushing silence. Then, "Wife. That's, oh my God, that's Richard Lawson. She's married to him? The Richard Lawson?" The whispers erupted like a dam breaking. Phones, lowered moments ago, flew back up. Camera flashes lit the room like lightning. Reporters materialized from nowhere, microphones extended, voices shouting questions. Madame Parker made a sound like she'd been punched. Neville's face went from smug to ashen in half a second, champagne glass slipping from his fingers and shattering on the floor. Clarissa, still hovering near the kitchen entrance, covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face. Richard ignored all of it. "Madame Parker," he said, voice still quiet but cutting through the chaos like a blade. "We need to talk." Madame Parker descended from the stage on unsteady legs. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked uncertain. Vulnerable. She smoothed her dress with shaking hands. "Mr. Lawson, I had no idea. That she was my wife." Richard's eyebrow lifted. "Or that she was human. This is all a misunderstanding. Is it?" He glanced at the security guards who'd stripped me. "Because from where I'm standing, you orchestrated the public humiliation of an innocent woman based on accusations you knew were false." "I didn't know they were false. The necklace is missing, and she was never near it," Richard finished. "In fact, I have footage that shows exactly where your necklace is. And who put it there." Madame's face went grey. "Footage? Did you really think I'd let my wife work in a house like this without protection?" He smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "I've had surveillance on this estate for 6 months. Every room, every hallway, every whispered conversation." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "That's illegal," Madame started. "Actually, it's not," a new voice interrupted. A woman appeared beside Richard. Late 30s. Black suit. Severe ponytail. Tablet in hand. Eyes like flint. Audrey. Richard's head of security. She'd been with him for a decade, former Secret Service, brilliant strategist, Zero tolerance for bullshit. The surveillance equipment was placed in public areas of the estate, Audrey continued, voice crisp and professional. Hallways. Common rooms. No expectation of privacy. Completely legal under state law. She tapped her tablet. And what we captured is illuminating. Audrey stepped toward the ballroom's presentation screen, a massive display usually used for speeches or photo slideshows. If I may, she said to the AV tech hovering nearby. The young man practically fell over himself plugging in her tablet. Within seconds, the screen lit up. Security footage. Black and white. Timestamp in the corner. The crowd pressed closer, necks craning. Clip 1. A hallway. Empty at first. Then Neville Parker appeared, glancing over his shoulder like a kid about to steal cookies. He reached into his tuxedo jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Even in grainy black and white, it was recognizable. The diamond necklace. Gasps erupted. Neville, standing near the back of the ballroom, made a choking sound. On screen, he placed the box on a service tray near the kitchen entrance. Then he walked away, smoothing his hair, adjusting his tie. Clip 2. The same hallway. Minutes later, Clarissa appeared, looking around nervously before picking up the tray. She opened the box. Saw the necklace. Her hand flew to her mouth. Then, and this is what made the crowd gasp again, she took the necklace and hid it under a stack of folded napkins in the staff quarters. Clip 3. Madam Parker entering the pantry where Clarissa stood, holding the hidden necklace. They spoke no audio, but the body language was clear. Madam nodded once. Clarissa nodded back. Then Madam left. The screen went dark. The ballroom erupted. Wait, someone called. There's no sound. How do we know what they were saying? Audrey smiled thinly. I'm glad you asked. She tapped her tablet again. Audio crackled through the speakers. Madam Parker's voice, tinny but clear. She's getting too comfortable. Walking around like she owns the place. Neville's voice, slurred and smug. She turned me down. Twice. Thinks she's too good for us. So what do you suggest? We humiliate her. Publicly. She won't survive the scandal. And maybe then. A pause. Maybe then she'll learn her place. And if that doesn't work, then we destroy her completely. Laughter. Cold. Cruel. The audio cut off. I felt Richard's arm tighten around me. The ballroom had gone silent again. But this time, the silence wasn't shock. It was fury. Directed at the Parkers. Phones were recording everything now. Reporters shouting questions. Guests backing away from Madam Parker and Neville like they carried plague. Madam tried to speak. It's taken out of context. Context. Richard's voice cut through like a whip. You conspired to frame my wife for a crime you orchestrated. You stripped her in front of 300 people. You filmed her humiliation. What context makes that acceptable? I didn't know she was. It doesn't matter who she is. Richard's control finally cracked. She could have been anyone. A maid. A waitress. A nobody from nowhere. And you still would have had no right to do what you did. The crowd murmured agreement. Madam's face crumpled. Mr. Lawson, please. I'm not finished. He gestured to Audrey. She smiled. Oh, there's more. When you think you've seen it all, Richard Lawson pulls out the nuclear option. And what comes next? It doesn't just destroy the Parkers' reputation. It destroys their empire. Audrey tapped her tablet one more time. The screen behind her changed. No longer security footage. Now it displayed documents. Financial records. Legal filings. Complex. Dense. The kind of thing most people wouldn't understand at a glance. But Richard understood them perfectly. 6 months ago, he began, voice calm again but edged with steel, I became interested in Parker Holdings. Madam Parker's head snapped up. What? Parker Holdings. Your family's company. Real estate development. Media acquisitions. Luxury hospitality. He paused. Your legacy. What are you talking about? Richard gestured to the screen. I bought it. Silence. Then, that's impossible. Is it? Richard's smile was razor-sharp. Let me walk you through this. Audrey advanced the presentation. Slide 1. Shell Company purchases. Through 12 different shell companies registered in Delaware, the Caymans, and Luxembourg, I quietly acquired shares in Parker Holdings. Small percentages at first. Nothing that would trigger alarm. The crowd leaned in, fascinated despite themselves. Slide 2. Hostile takeover timeline. Over 6 months, those purchases accumulated. 5% here. 8% there. A strategic acquisition from a pension fund. A buyout of a disgruntled board member. Madam's face had gone from grey to white. Slide 3. Final numbers. As of 11:47 p.m. tonight, approximately 20 minutes ago, I officially own 38.6% of Parker Holdings. Gasps. That's not majority, Madam started. It is when combined with the shares held by your other dissatisfied board members, Richard interrupted. 7 of them, to be exact. All of whom have agreed to vote with me on any proposal I bring forward. He let that sink in. Which means as of right now, I control Parker Holdings. Madam swayed on her feet. Someone behind her, a family member, maybe reached out to steady her. You can't. I can. And I have. Richard's voice was matter-of-fact. Clinical. Effective immediately, the board will vote to initiate a full forensic audit of Parker Holdings' financial practices over the last decade. On what grounds? Embezzlement. Tax fraud. Misappropriation of charitable funds. He paused. Shall I continue? Neville, who'd been trying to edge toward the exit, froze. Based on preliminary findings, Richard continued, there's evidence of systematic financial misconduct. Money laundered through shell corporations. Charity donations claimed but never donated. Real estate deals manipulated to avoid taxes. He looked directly at Neville. Most of it traced back to you. Neville's face went from white to red to purple in rapid succession. That's slander. It's documentation, Audrey corrected, tapping her tablet again. New images appeared on screen. Bank statements. Wire transfers. Email threads. All with Neville's name on them. $3.2 million diverted from the Parker Foundation, supposedly for housing development in underserved communities, actually transferred to your personal accounts. More documents. $1.8 million in fake vendor invoices. The vendors don't exist. The money went to you. More. And my personal favorite, Audrey said, voice dripping with disdain, $900,000 claimed as business expenses for corporate entertainment. Which appears to be strip clubs, luxury cars, and cocaine. The crowd made a collective sound of disgust. Neville tried to speak. Failed. Tried again. That's not, you can't prove. Actually, a new voice interrupted, we can. 2 uniformed officers stepped through the terrace doors. NYPD. Badges displayed. Expressions serious. Neville Parker, the first officer said. Neville backed up a step. Yes. You're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy to commit defamation. What? No. Mom. But Madam Parker wasn't looking at him. She was staring at Richard like he was the devil himself. The officers moved forward. Handcuffs gleaming under the chandelier light. You have the right to remain silent. As they read Neville his rights, he thrashed weakly, voice rising to a whine. This is bullshit. You can't do this. Do you know who I am? The officer cuffing him didn't even blink. Yeah. A criminal. They led him away. The crowd parted silently. Some filmed. Some whispered. None tried to help him. With Neville gone, attention shifted. To Clarissa. She stood near the kitchen entrance, face streaked with tears, body shaking. "Ms. Rodriguez." Audrey addressed her directly. Clarissa flinched. Yes. You were involved in tonight's incident, weren't you?" Clarissa's composure shattered completely. She sank to her knees, sobbing. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. They said if I didn't help, they'd fire me. I have kids. I can't lose this job. I'm so sorry, Hailey, I'm so." I felt Richard tense beside me. But I stepped forward. Out of his protective embrace. Toward Clarissa. "Hailey," Richard started. "It's okay," I said quietly. I knelt in front of Clarissa, still wrapped in Richard's jacket. "Look at me," I said softly. She raised her head, eyes red and swollen. "Did they threaten you?" She nodded frantically. "Madam said if I didn't help, she'd call immigration on my cousin. His undocumented. She said she'd make sure he got deported." My stomach twisted. "And you believed her?" "She's done it before," Clarissa whispered. "To other staff. She finds something to hold over you and then," she broke off, sobbing again. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." I looked back at Richard and Audrey. Was she coerced? Audrey consulted her tablet. Based on the recordings, yes. Madam Parker explicitly threatened her multiple times. I turned back to Clarissa. "Then you're not going to jail," I said. "But you are going to testify. Against her. Against all of them." Clarissa grabbed my hands. "Yes. Anything. I'll do anything." One of the officers helped her to her feet, led her gently aside to take her statement. I stood and returned to Richard. His eyes were soft when he looked at me. "You're remarkable, you know that." "I'm angry," I corrected. "But not at her." I looked at Madam Parker. At her. Madam Parker stood alone now. Her son arrested. Her co-conspirator cooperating. Her empire crumbling. But she was still trying to maintain dignity. "Mr. Lawson," she said, voice shaking but controlled, "surely we can come to some arrangement. This has all been a terrible misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Richard's laugh was humorless. "You orchestrated the public humiliation of my wife. You threatened your staff. You embezzled millions from your own charity." "I didn't embezzle." "Your signature is on the transfer authorizations," Audrey interjected. Madam's mouth snapped shut. Richard stepped closer to her. "You're finished," he said simply. "Parker Holdings will be restructured. The board will vote you out. Your assets will be frozen pending investigation. And your name, the name you've spent 60 years building, will become synonymous with cruelty and corruption. Please. You had a choice tonight," Richard continued. "You could have been human. You could have investigated properly. You could have shown an ounce of dignity or compassion." He gestured to me. "Instead, you chose to destroy a woman you thought was powerless. Just because you could." Tears, real ones, maybe the first real emotion I'd seen from her, tracked down Madam's face. "I was wrong," she whispered. "I was so wrong." "Yes," Richard agreed. "You were." He turned away from her. Dismissive. Final. "Officers." Two more uniformed police stepped forward. "Madeleine Parker, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and criminal coercion." As they led her away, hands cuffed, head down, the perfect image of fallen pride, the crowd watched in stunned silence. The Queen had fallen. The empire had crumbled. And I was still standing. Richard took my hand. "Let's go home," he said. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. As we walked toward the terrace, toward the waiting helicopter, the crowd parted. But this time, it was different. This time, as I passed, people nodded. Some apologized. Some looked ashamed. One woman, the one who'd laughed and raised her champagne glass earlier, couldn't meet my eyes. Good. At the terrace doors, I paused. Looked back at the ballroom. At the shattered crystal. The extinguished candles. the faces still processing what they'd witnessed. "Goodbye," I said quietly. Not to anyone in particular. To the chapter one was closing. Then Richard and I stepped into the night. The helicopter blades spun up. And as we lifted off, I saw the flashing lights of police cars and news vans surrounding the estate below. By morning, the world would know everything. But right now, I was flying away. Free. I woke the next morning to the sound of my phone vibrating, and vibrating. 73 missed calls. 246 text messages. Emails flooding in faster than I could count. Richard appeared in the bedroom doorway with coffee and a tablet. "You're trending," he said. "What?" He sat beside me on the bed, pulling up social media. My face was everywhere. #Justice for Hailey. #Parker scandal. #Billionaire's wife. #Maid to millionaire. Videos from the gala, shaky phone footage of me being stripped, of Richard's arrival, of the Parkers being arrested had gone viral. 10 million views. 20 million. 50 million. Comments flooded in by the thousands. This is what happens when rich people think they're untouchable. I'm crying. She stood there with so much dignity even when they tried to destroy her. Richard Lawson is a king for this. Everyone needs to share this. Everyone. News outlets picked it up next. CNN, hidden heiress humiliated at elite gala, then her billionaire husband landed. The New York Times, the fall of the Parker dynasty, when privilege meets justice. Forbes, Richard Lawson's hostile takeover exposes years of Parker financial crimes. People magazine, from Maid to media storm, the love story that shocked New York. I set the tablet down, overwhelmed. This is too much. Richard set down his coffee and pulled me close. "You don't have to read any of it. You don't have to respond to anyone. We can disappear for a while if you want." "Where?" "Anywhere. The villa in Tuscany. The house in Bali. We could get on a plane right now and be gone." It was tempting. God, it was tempting. But I shook my head. No. If I run now, I'm letting them win. I'm letting everyone think I was a victim who needed saving. I met his eyes. "I'm not a victim, Richard. I'm a survivor. And I'm going to use this." He smiled. "Use it how?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I will." 3 days later, I sat across from Anderson Cooper in a CNN studio. Bright lights. Multiple cameras. Millions watching live. I turned down dozens of interview requests, but this one felt right. Anderson had a reputation for being fair, compassionate, and tough when needed. "Hailey," he began, "thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. Let's start with the question everyone's asking. Why? Why would you, a woman married to one of the wealthiest men in the world, choose to work as a maid?" I took a breath. Because I needed to know who I was without the money. Without the name. Without the access. Know who you were. When you marry someone like Richard, suddenly everyone wants to know you. Talk to you. Be near you. But are they interested in you? Or just what you represent? Anderson nodded. You wanted to see how people treated you when they thought you were powerless. Exactly. And what did you learn? I paused, choosing my words carefully. I learned that some people are kind regardless of who you are. I learned that power reveals character, both good and bad. And I learned that the world desperately needs to value domestic workers, service staff, everyone we dismiss as the help. Because they're human beings. Because they're human beings, I echoed. With dreams and dignity and families and worth. And they deserve to be treated with respect. Anderson leaned forward. What happened at that gala? It was assault. It was public humiliation. How are you processing that? My throat tightened. I'm angry. I'm hurt. Some days I can't stop shaking when I remember it. I swallowed hard. But I'm also determined. Determined to make sure it never happens to anyone else. Which brings us to the announcement you're making today. I nodded. Yes. Today, my husband and I are launching the Hailey Project, a global initiative to protect and empower domestic workers. The announcement went live immediately after the interview. A comprehensive website, a 24/7 hotline, legal resources, emergency shelters, and something unprecedented, a $50 million endowment to fund it all. $30 million from Richard. $20 million from me, my own money, earned through investments I'd made before we married. The response was immediate. Within hours, the hotline received over 1,000 calls. Women reporting abuse. Men trapped in exploitative situations. Families desperate for help. Each call broke my heart and strengthened my resolve. We hired a team. Lawyers, social workers, therapists, advocates. We partnered with existing organizations, domestic workers' unions, immigration rights groups, women's shelters, and we fought for better labor laws, for stronger protections, for dignity. While I built something new, the Parkers faced justice. Neville was denied bail. Too much evidence. Too much flight risk. He sat in Rikers Island, awaiting trial on 19 counts of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. His lawyers were the best money could buy. But the evidence was overwhelming. Madam Parker fared slightly better: house arrest in her estate, ankle monitor, constant surveillance. But her empire was gone. Parker Holdings stock crashed. Board members resigned. Business partners distanced themselves. The family name, once synonymous with power and prestige, became toxic overnight. Charities returned donations. Society clubs revoked memberships. Invitations stopped coming. Madam gave one interview, 3 weeks after the gala. She looked older. Thinner. Her hair was grey at the roots, no time for touch-ups, I guess. I was wrong, she told the reporter, voice small. I let power corrupt me. I forgot that every person, regardless of their job or their status, deserves dignity. And I'm sorry. The interviewer pressed. Do you have anything to say directly to Hailey Lawson? Madam looked straight at the camera. Hailey, I know you'll probably never forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know, what you've built, the Hailey Project, it's important. It's necessary. And it's more than I ever did with my wealth and privilege. Tears tracked down her face. You're a better person than I ever was. I watched the interview alone in our living room. Richard hovered nearby, ready to turn it off if I needed him to. But I watched the whole thing. When it ended, I sat in silence for a long time. Do you forgive her? Richard finally asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe one day. But not today. That's fair. Today, I'm just focused on moving forward. 6 weeks after the gala, we cut the ribbon on the Hailey Haven. Our first residential shelter. Brooklyn. Renovated brownstone. 24 private rooms. On-site counseling. Legal aid. Job training. A place where domestic workers escaping abuse could stay for free while they rebuilt their lives. The ribbon-cutting ceremony brought out press, supporters, and survivors. But the moment that broke me came after the cameras left. A woman approached, mid-40s, nervous, clutching a worn purse. Ms. Lawson. I turned. Please, call me Hailey. I'm Maria. I saw what happened to you. On TV. I'm sorry you had to see that. No, she said quickly. Don't be sorry. Because when I saw you stand back up, when I saw you fight back, I realized something. What's that? I could fight back too. She started crying. ***, I've been working for a family for 8 years. They don't pay me overtime. They take my passport so I can't leave. She swallowed hard. They treat me like property. And I thought that was just my life. That I deserved it because I was undocumented and poor and had nowhere else to go. I took her hands. You didn't deserve that. You deserve respect and safety and fair pay. And we're going to help you. Really? Really? She collapsed against me, sobbing with relief. And I held her, crying too. Because this was why I'd survived that night. Not for revenge. Not for headlines. But for Maria. And for the thousands of others like her. 6 months later, standing on the main stage of the Global Conference for Domestic Workers' Rights felt surreal. 3,000 people in the audience. Delegates from 47 countries. Media from around the world. And me, the woman who'd been stripped naked in a ballroom, about to address them all. Backstage, Richard squeezed my hand. You ready? No, I admitted. But I'm doing it anyway. He kissed my temple. That's my girl. The moderator's voice echoed through the speakers. Please welcome to the stage, founder of the Hailey Project and advocate for workers' rights worldwide, Hailey Lawson. Applause. I walked out into the lights. My name is Hailey Lawson, I began, voice steady despite my racing heart. And 6 months ago, I was stripped, humiliated, and accused of a crime I didn't commit, all because powerful people thought I was disposable. The room was silent. I wasn't the first person this happened to. And if we don't act, I won't be the last. I paused, letting that sink in. There are 6 to 7 million domestic workers worldwide. 6 to 7 million people who cook your meals, clean your homes, care for your children, and keep your lives running smoothly. And most of them have no legal protections. No overtime pay. No sick leave. No recourse when they're abused. Heads nodded throughout the audience. They're invisible until you need them. Then they're invisible again. But here's what I learned during my 6 months working as a maid: they're not invisible. They're human beings with dreams and dignity and worth. And they deserve better. The applause started small, then swelled. So today, I'm announcing an expansion of the Hailey Project. We're opening shelters in 12 new cities. We're launching a legal defense fund with 200 lawyers ready to take on exploitative employers. And we're partnering with legislators in 8 countries to pass comprehensive domestic worker protection laws. Standing ovation. I waited for the applause to die down. But laws aren't enough. We need culture change. We need everyone in this room and everyone watching to commit to treating every person with respect. Regardless of their job. Regardless of their status. I looked directly into the camera. Because dignity isn't a luxury. It's a right. The applause was deafening. 1 week after the conference, a letter arrived. No return address. Cream cardstock. My name handwritten in elegant script. Inside, a single page. Hailey. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I've been watching what you've built. The shelters. The advocacy work. The lives you're changing. It's extraordinary. I wasted 60 years of privilege and power on maintaining appearances and crushing anyone who threatened my position. You've used 6 months of pain to lift up thousands of people. You're what I should have been. I'm volunteering now. At a domestic workers resource center in Queens. Answering phones. Making coffee. Doing whatever they need. It's not much. It doesn't come close to making amends. But it's a start. Thank you for showing me a better way. Madeline. I read it 3 times. Richard found me on the terrace, letter in hand, tears on my cheeks. You okay? She's volunteering, I said. Madeline Parker is volunteering at a workers' resource center. Do you believe her? I don't know. But I hope it's real. I hope she actually changes. I folded the letter carefully. What are you going to do with it? Keep it, I decided. As a reminder that people can change. If they choose to. The Hailey Haven network expanded to 43 shelters across 6 continents just under a year. We'd helped over 15,000 workers escape abusive situations. We'd passed legislation in 12 countries. We'd changed lives. And today, 1 year to the day after the Winter Gala, we were throwing a different kind of party. An appreciation gala. For the workers themselves. 500 domestic workers, housekeepers, nannies, caregivers, drivers dressed in their finest, gathered in the same ballroom where I'd been humiliated. But tonight, they weren't serving. Tonight, they were being served. By Richard and me. By volunteers from the Hailey Project. By the team that had made this all possible. As I carried a tray of champagne through the crowd, I caught my reflection in one of the tall mirrors. I wore a simple black dress. My hair was pulled back. No diamonds. No designer labels. I looked like I had a year ago. But everything was different. Because this time, I was choosing to serve. And there's all the difference in the world between being forced into invisibility and choosing humility. Near the end of the night, the orchestra struck up a waltz. Richard found me near the dessert table. Dance with me. In front of everyone. Especially in front of everyone. He led me onto the floor. As we swayed to the music, I looked around the ballroom. At Maria, laughing with new friends she'd made at the shelter. At Clarissa, who'd been hired as a coordinator for the Hailey Project after testifying against the Parkers. At hundreds of workers, finally celebrated. Finally seen. What are you thinking? Richard murmured. That this right here is worth everything. The pain. Even the pain. He pulled me closer. You're remarkable, Hailey Lawson. We're remarkable, I corrected. Together. As the song ended, applause filled the ballroom. But this time, it wasn't for revenge or scandal. It was for hope. For change. For dignity restored. My name is Hailey Lawson. 1 year ago, they tried to break me. They stripped my uniform. They filmed my humiliation. They laughed at my pain. But I didn't break. Instead, I rose. Not because I married a billionaire, though having Richard by my side helped. Not because I wanted revenge, though justice was sweet. But because I refused to let cruelty have the final word. Today, the Hailey Project serves workers in 60 countries. Today, 15,000 people have safe housing because of what we built. Today, dignity isn't just a dream, it's a reality we're creating, one person at a time. If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told you don't matter, this is for you. Your worth isn't determined by your job title or your bank account. Your worth is inherent. Unshakable. Undeniable. Don't let anyone strip that from you. Ever. Drop a comment with your story. Hit subscribe if this resonated with you. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the world needs more people who stand up when others try to tear them down. The world needs more fighters. The world needs more you. Thank you for listening to my story. See you next time.